Hey, this is Gary.
This is Mike.
And Daniel. We're not professionals. We're just three addicts sharing our experiences, strength, and hope regarding recovery.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in our lives.
Welcome to another episode of the 12th Step Podcast. My name is Gary.
This is Mike.
And this is Daniel.
Well, welcome back, guys. It's 2026.
Yes, it is.
So good to be back together again. That's fantastic. We've been off for a couple of months, a couple of weeks at least.
The holiday season got really, really busy, I think, for all of us.
Yes.
There were a couple of times that we wanted to get together and it just didn't work out. And now we find ourselves in a new year.
Yes, we do.
All right. Well,
very exciting.
I should say we have been talking about different things that we could talk about, and we've kind of come up with an interesting idea, kind of an impromptu episode that we're just going to go ahead and run with. And so we're just going to jump right into it. We were talking about it being a new year and a little bit about a year and reviewing the year. We talked a little bit about New Year's resolutions and what that looks like. And Daniel said something interesting. He says, I don't make New Year's resolutions anymore. And then we all acknowledged that we made tons of resolutions when we were in the height of our addictions and things like that. And the way that I approach the new year is very different than I have at other times in my life. So I think maybe we should just kind of jump into this and maybe talk a little bit about what it looked like when we were in the height of our addiction and why that didn't work, and maybe what it looks like now, or how we approach that kind of self-improvement now, or how we lay that out and what that looks like and why it works or doesn't work. And we'll just see where it takes us. What do you say?
Yeah, that works.
I think that's great. I think that's a great idea.
All right.
Why didn't it work? Why didn't it work in the height of our addiction?
Well, what did it look like in the height of our addiction?
I think all of us, universally agree that it didn't work. I mean, New Year's resolution has been a part of my life, literally for as far back as I can possibly remember. And making some New Year's resolutions surrounding my addictive behavior was always present. It was always something that was on my mind. And I think I hit a spot just like Daniel indicated that, you know what, I'm done with this. It just doesn't seem to be working. I don't know how to make it work, so why bother with it anymore? I do remember a very distinct point in time where I said enough of this nonsense. And because I couldn't find any success. So what was it about that was so unsuccessful?
Well, I think looking back on it now, I followed a very destructive pattern of, we'll pick New Year's Day. It's a new year. I'm going to stop this behavior, just going to make a clean slate of it. And then it seems to me that I would just binge before the date, which indicated that I wasn't really in a place that I wanted to change.
Yeah.
If I was trying to pack in as much as I could before the deadline, and then I just kind of quit cold turkey, but I didn't have any plan other than I'm just going to stop this behavior. And then that would kick off a really vicious cycle for me, because there are several significant dates over the next 2 months, that I would use as a reset.
Yeah.
Because it's New Year's, and that was one. And then there was my anniversary, and then there was like my birthday, and those were, pretty evenly spaced over the next couple of months. And it just would start this vicious cycle of, I would white knuckle it for a little while, and then I'd relapse, and then I'd binge really hard and reset and repeat that 2 or 3 times. And so then, so as a result, the holiday season became extremely active for me, followed by a very, very self-destructive cycle of never again until the next time. And that it just never did work for me. So that's what the unhealthy version of that looked like.
Yeah, I mean, mine was very similar to that, but also with that, it was always like these open-ended resolutions, like, oh, I'm going to exercise more this year. Didn't say how often, didn't say how I was going to exercise. It's just more, I'm going to do that more, or, I'm going to stop acting out in my addiction. But there was no game plan to that or how I was going to do that. It was just kind of this vague, 50,000 foot view above of this is what I want to do, but not really coming up with a way to do that. And like I said, I don't do that anymore. I set goals that I want to achieve for the year, and then I plan out how I'm going to reach those goals. So I think that's how, for me, it's differed. It's kind of similar, but it's something, any of the goals I place are something that are achievable, but I have to have a plan of how I'm going to achieve that, where my resolutions were just kind of this vague, open-ended thing where there was no plan of how I was going to do it or achieve it. And more often than not, like a month or two in, I'd give up. Just kind of like, like going to the gym. Like a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm going to go to the gym every day this year. And then think life happens and they miss a day. And it's like, okay, no problem. I'm not going to miss another day. And then something else comes up and they miss another day. And then finally we get to the point where like, why am I going?
Yeah.
Like, this is,
I think
it's not achievable because there was no goal there. Like, oh, I'm going to lose 5 pounds this year or 10 pounds this year.
Right. Not only that, I think you also kind of brought up something else. There's an expectation of perfection.
Yes.
In a lot of the language and thinking.
Yeah.
When you're doing it in a not healthy way, because it'll be like, I'm going to never do this again.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to go every day.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to, you know what I mean? And
there's no gray, there's no leeway in there.
Right.
And if I miss a day, I've lost it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the fascinating piece for me through this entire process of recovery is making the link between the reason why I acted out in the first place, which means that literally I was uneducated when it came to setting a New Year's resolution. I had no idea why I was acting out in the first place, other than it just relieved stress. It relieved me from, it was a great distractor, as our SAA book describes it. And it wasn't until I became educated through the recovery process to help me understand why it was I was acting out in the first place, that then I could set a realistic goal about not acting out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think, and it was fascinating to find out the reasons why I did act out, right? I mean, stress of all things, anxieties, or feeling depressed, or feeling senses of inadequacy, all the things that were just part of life that I just assumed everybody experienced. The way I self-soothed, if you will, is by acting out behaviors. So the fact then is that if I just set a New Year's resolution based on a date, there's no possible way I could be successful under those circumstances, because I had no idea the basis of my acting out behavior. So maybe a realistic goal that anybody who's thinking about setting a New Year's resolution that's around acting out behavior is understanding. Maybe the goal is to get educated on why it is you're acting out. Maybe that's the real New Year's resolution that ought to be set. Not one of just, hey, I'm going to end this. It's a matter of, I need to understand why I'm doing this.
Exactly.
If that makes any sense.
I think it does. I also think I've adopted a little bit different kind of an idea of, if I identify something in my life that needs to be changed, then there's a part of me that wants to start taking care of it now. Mm-hmm. A bad habit that I would have is I would say, oh, I'm going to quit on this day. It was like in the future. And then, I would, and that never seemed to work. It's like, and now it's like, oh, I've identified this. What can I do about that right now to change it? What's something I can do right in this moment, and I found a tremendous amount more success than that. I do find, however, though, and maybe it's a cultural thing, or maybe think about what it is, and would necessarily call doing that still.
Well, I mean, what you're talking about, 8 out there, like IEPS goal.
Right.
So I'm doing that day and to be moving forward, because for me, months out, that to get to that, it waited so much to that point now or something else. So resolutions never worked. Planning on how I was to achieve as an addict, where I could take any of those. So I was always the things bombarded, but really not manage to numb out and avoid translated into those resolutions. And now that my goals for the year
Right.
has made it that goal am I? And what evaluate like, oh yeah, I on those, or 7 months or something like that, or with the
one day kind of an event to evaluating where I'm at a month later or 2 months. Really important point, and I says it's what true measure change or have I not down? Okay, today's experiencing right now can do, or maybe even the space or a new read that to evaluate. I think that's important. One of the was during those periods of just a day, 24 hours. I always felt like it was to no resolution of any of them down in a way that.
What are you doing now? Being more working.
The stuff that not focus on one specific. It's down. This is where I think I have to accomplish. I write a lot of stuff down. Kind of it's a form of journaling, but more of just an evaluation of stuff, and then and it's sort of sequential. So today's days will be different than the next time I write, and I kind of pay attention to that. These are the things that I'm really kind of tracking. This is the stuff I'm doing. So that's the stuff I think that works for me. And I go back and revisit that. I go back and revisit that regularly to see what was on my mind a year ago, what was really troubling me 6 months ago. Where was I at this point in time, and what things were I struggling with, in these moments? And I like that. I like that. That seems to work better for me. I think I just never found the point of New Year's resolution per se in that sense, in the hardest, truest sense of, hey, today's January 1st. This is what I need to do.
That was another interesting change in my mindset. Because I would think of, the year's brand new. I haven't screwed this one up yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you did, then it's like, well.
It's over now.
It's over now. But something that you mentioned, Mike, that I wanted to elaborate on was that you mentioned about journaling or write it down. And that's something that I found to be a tremendously helpful tool because it helps me look at things differently than I might normally look at them. And it helps me see success that normally I would overlook.
That's right. That's exactly right.
The best example that I can give. Well, I'm going to use a financial example. Okay. So you keep track of stuff, and let's say, I'm going to use an example from work because this is something that really kind of taught me the principle or illustrated it in a way that made real clear sense to me. And then I started applying it in other aspects of my life. Mm-hmm. Okay. So every month, every 4-week period, we call it a period, we're set a goal. My bosses set us a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they want us to make X amount of dollars in sales. Okay. So last year, or the year before, 2024, when I first came into my new position, we vastly went way past all of those goals. We achieved it in spades, like 120%, 130%. And just a big, huge turnaround for this store. And that was fantastic. That was fun to be a part of and things like that. And so then we start, the year 2025, and we're going through the same period. And this year I'm looking at those same percentages because that's what I was praised for. So then I started to over focus on just those percentages. Mm-hmm. I was 120% over period. But, for the same 4-week period this year, I was only 110% over. And so even though in 2025 I had a successful year, it was easy for me to look at it like
it wasn't as successful. And that was actually a little bit discouraging until I kind of went back and reviewed the material again. And this is going to sound really silly, until I realized, I did so good in the previous year that this year they upped all of my goals. Yeah.
So even though the percentages...
So wasn't that 110% above last year's 120?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
then I looked down and I think, oh my gosh, my gross sales are, way better. But that's not a way that I looked at. Looked at the data or measured.
Because you saw 110, which was 10% less than 120.
Right.
Yeah.
So when Mike suggests, I journal and I write it down, and I think that's probably that's really, really wise. You keep records and things like that, because it'll not only does it allow you to measure your progress, but it also allows you to see success in a way that you might not have otherwise.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because
Yeah.
you can look at data points and things like that and get all kinds of interpretations from it, but there are different ways of measuring success. You know, another really good example that I look at is, you know, I have to, you know, I don't know. There's one area that they call it an opportunity. There's one area that we need to improve on. Okay. And I look at it, and if I focused on we missed the margin by this much, and I can only focus on that, then I'm going to feel like I failed.
Yeah.
But what I'm not taking into account is the dramatic percentages of increase.
Yeah.
Yes, we've still missed the mark, but we were 20% higher this time than last time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so writing that stuff down, I think is important to note. You know, you can apply that to, there's a lot of different ways to apply it if you keep track of that stuff. Like if your goals and stuff like that are to lose weight, you know, then you're going to lose weight and gain it, and lose and gain it. But you're going to see a trend up or down.
Yeah. Is that trend still going upward?
Right.
Yeah.
Recovery is the same thing. You're acting out your relapses, things like that. You know, I've talked to people who have had relapses and they think that they're starting back at ground zero. And it's like, no, not exactly. Because, you know, when you first started, your relapse was like a week-long binger, and you'd disappear and you'd go nuts.
Yeah.
You know, and then slowly the distances between your relapses start to get longer, and the severity of your relapses get shorter, and then the recovery time gets quicker. Yeah. You know, and those are all steps to progress that you need to. So that's a really, really
you need
long
to celebrate.
way. Yeah,
you really need to celebrate those. Those are big recovery steps.
Yeah, they are. So however you're applying those principles, you know, it all kind of works the same way, but you can't note that if you don't write it down. Yeah. If you're not journaling or doing something that you can measure it by, then it'll get lost.
Yeah. I mean, I started journaling when I started Sage and working with Shane back in 2019. And the other day I pulled my very first volume out, and I just started glancing through that, and just the way I talked.
Yeah.
I mean, just, you know, in my journal entries is vastly different than I do now. I mean, it's just moaning and groaning about things. It's being in victim stance. It's, you know, talking about the challenges of my marriage as it was failing, you know, and writing now, it's like I'm taking accountability for things. There's a lot of hope and positivity in there. Even when things are difficult and challenging, it's not like, woe is me. It's like, all right, this happened.
What do I need
What do I do next? And what do I do to take care of this and move forward? And so it is different, you know, and even seeing that, I mean, and I'm sure there's a multitude of other changes, but just seeing that huge parallel is a big thing with journaling. And I'm sure if I took the time to read through the other 4 or 5 volumes, I would see other things that stand out just as as blaring as that does.
Sure.
I think this one important component to journaling. I know a lot of people who write journals. My folks specifically write journals for others to read, kind of like a posterity thing, you know. And I just don't. I have 5 or 6 notebooks around the house that depending on where I'm at and what's going on, when I take a minute to write a few things down. And the purpose of that for me in a lot of ways is just, I love going back to say, oh, this is the issue I was struggling with at that particular moment in my life. And then compare that to where I'm at right now. Wow, in some miraculous way, my higher power and I have navigated that in a way that I'm not dealing with that in the same fashion. I feel like I'm past that, if that makes sense. And it's the same way when I'll go to another journal and pop open something and see that, oh, wow, this was the topic I was studying at that particular point in my life because it was really, really important. And I see how that's blessed my life to this point. That's really relevant to me now. I've internalized that. I've made some progress in this particular area. All that sort of stuff is important to me. And I love the fact that it's not sort of a one-day, first of the year kind of a basis. It's a matter of this is where I was at in June this last year. This is where I was at in September of this last year. And who knows, maybe next year, maybe this is where I was at in May, or you see what I'm saying? I mean, these are the issues that I'm dealing with at this particular point in my life. And oh yeah, and here are the things I think I need to do. And one of the things I've always found is, and we talk about this an awful lot in recovery, right? At the point in time I need a set of tools, by the time I get there and that decision has to be made, I'm prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the unique things about recovery all the way along that's been fascinating to me, is that, even the 12 steps are sort of, hey, first of all, you've got to grapple with the idea of making this change in your life. Now you've got to go make the change, right?
Right.
And I love that. I love that about recovery. It's been fantastic in terms of the steps. And that seems to be the way when we start talking about resolutions and some of these things that, I may be grappling with this particular idea at this point in time, write it down and deal with that. These are the things and these are the particular steps. And then at some point in time to go back and read the fact, oh yeah, this is where I was at. Now I'm in a whole different place. And these are the issues that I'm dealing with. It's just been a great path that way. So that's one of the big changes, I think, in terms of how my resolution process has evolved.
Another thing that I've noticed is, when I was going through my addictive process and things like that, I noticed that there were patterns. I would have these cycles that would go, and sometimes it was a daily cycle, and sometimes it was a weekly one, or a monthly one, or I even noticed that it was seasonal. And we've talked about this on the podcast before, but I found that I have a tendency now more to review my attempts on in a lot of different ways. I still do it year by year. How did I do this year compared to last year? But I also do it by the week, and by the month, and by the day. You know what I mean? So every day I'll get up and I can compare that to the day before, and then make decisions on what I want to do tomorrow. So it's not something that I do on a yearly kind of a thing. On kind of a micro level, it's something that I'm doing all the time, assessing how I did and what I might do a little bit differently, and then I'll give you a really good example. And this seems to have worked out for me really well, is that, I want to establish a ritual in the morning. I needed to change that. And I wanted to establish a really strong one in the evening, and I wanted to include things like prayer and meditation, or journaling, or, no screen time for, the hour leading up to bed, or different things like that. So what I did is I would write out a schedule for the day that was like, this is my ideal. Okay. But then knowing full well that every single day was going to vary from that to one degree or another. As much as I want to, I'm not going to get up on time every day or go to bed at the same time every day. You know what I mean? But there are elements that I want to include, and I also give myself the grace of the flexibility. Well, if I don't get this done in the morning the way that I would want to, I can pick that up at lunchtime or something along those lines. Or if I don't get in, an hour of exercise or half hour of exercise or whatever it is, even if I only make 10 minutes or 15 minutes for that particular thing or study or whatever it is, that's not nothing,
Yeah.
And it's the accumulation of those little things that make the difference,
Yeah, that's an entirely different mindset than what we've been talking about for sort of the way we did it in the acting out behaviors and the acting out. And I love the intentionality of all of that. I really do. As each one of us have talked about some of the changes we've made, it's just dripping with intentionality. That's the first thing. And it's in that intentionality that we find peace and safety and recovery and there's all the good things about recovery that come along with that. It's got great goal setting. It's got great review. It's got, good mindset, good healthy patterns, all that sort of stuff. There's an element of ritual to it, an element of routine that is healthy. All of that stuff is just good recovery tools. Every one of those are good recovery tools. So That's the major differences between my acting out days of New Year's resolutions and today.
Yeah. Because see, I remember in my the height of my addiction, I would try to control everything, and when I would try to do this kind of stuff, I would schedule it out, and then if I'd failed, it's like, oh, I'm going to do this for a half hour in the morning, and then if I didn't, that was a failure, or if I didn't start on time or end on time, that was a failure, and it was just done. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I would try to control things down to like almost a micro level.
Oh, yeah.
And it just doesn't work that way. And quite honestly, life just doesn't work that way. So, I'll go into a day at work, for example, and I know that I need to get X, Y, and Z done today,
Mm-hmm.
and it might be based on what the day is. I've got these tasks I need to get done today. And ideally, I would like to do them X, Y, Z and be done and then go for the rest of the day. But depending on my interaction with other people, with clients, with customers, with employees, all of this kind of stuff, I might have to do it Y, Z, X or
Mm-hmm.
Z, X, Y, or, but if at the end of the day I get those done, and allow myself the flexibility to do that, then, I'm still there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And
It
I don't
does.
have to call it, but the old me would have looked at that and called it a failure or felt like it was,
Yeah, I know that feeling. So much of our addictive behavior was this start and stop, and this, this, as Daniel's pointed out, sort of the interruptions of life, right? The schedule that we planned for ourselves that didn't work out, and then this, this feeling of despair would overcome us, like I can't do this anyway, so why bother? And I was never successful on my own of being able to figure out my disease until I needed help for that. And I didn't know that. I just simply didn't know that. So I think, anybody who's listening to this podcast thinking about New Year's resolutions, the one resolution I think I would recommend to everybody is find out about your disease. Find out enough to know that maybe what you don't know is really impairing your ability to be really successful at New Year's resolutions.
That's good counsel. And I think the advice that I would give is that keep track of things so that you can review them and learn to look at them from multiple different directions. Even review those kind of things with your partner, your mentor, your sponsor, all of these people, and then as you lay out your goals, have the goal in mind, but allow yourself a little bit of flexibility to take life on life's terms.
Yeah. And the thing that I would add to that is, goals are great. Set those goals up, but set up the steps that takes you to achieve those goals, and have that game plan in place. So it's not just, hey, I have this goal at the end of the field. How are you going to get to the end of the field? What plays are you going to do to get down there?
What's the next right thing?
What's the next right thing?
Yeah.
What are the steps to get there? Because that's really what it is.
And then really, really know why.
Yeah.
Why do I want to take these steps? Why is this goal important?
Yeah, definitely the whys behind it is so important. I
want
want to lose
something else to evaluate at all this as well is that a failure at recovery, a missed step in recovery isn't the same thing as a misstep in learning to swim or learning to trying to lose weight or some of those other things, right? There's nothing lost on a relapse or anything like that. That's one of the biggest things that most goal setting, that destroys most goal setting and New Year's resolution kind of stuff is as well. I failed once, I might as well just skip all this. I can't do it anyway, right? The reality of it is in the steps of recovery is that when those sorts of things happen, and they inevitably do, that nothing's lost, right? What we're really doing is we're learning. Yep. And it's in the process of learning that we overcome our addictive behaviors. So 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 those are perfect times to share some grace with ourselves. Be kind to us and have good support people around us to work with us through those difficult times as well.
Yeah, and that even applies to goal setting. Like, if you failed at achieving a goal, why? Evaluate it. What happened to make it so I didn't achieve this? You can take that, learn from it. That can be, you can reset that goal with different steps to get to it. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I've learned with recovery is, even though if I fail at something, what did I learn from it? Evaluate that. And then how can I adjust things so that I can go back for that target and make it this time? And I think that's the biggest thing that recovery lends to us is, we don't lose anything. We have learned something, even if we didn't reach that goal. There was stuff that we learned. How do we take that to reevaluate and move forward and hopefully hit that goal the second time? If we fail on the second time, the same thing.
Yeah.
Then we go for it the third time. So, yeah.
I think that's just about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
what a great discussion.
What a great discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Good luck with all of your improvement and recovery and all of those kind of goals, and know your whys, and good luck. Do it with intention. And with that, this is Gary saying, do the next right thing.
And this is Mike saying, do the work necessary to find the peace that recovery can bring.
And this is Daniel saying, find the peace in your recovery.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find us.
As a fellowship of recovering addicts, Sex Addicts Anonymous offers a message of hope to anyone who suffers from sex addiction. Check out saa-recovery.org.